Hi friends, I hope everyone's doing well. This video has a different format than my usual ones. Let me share a quick backstory to explain why. I received a question from a viewer named Brenda on my watercolor pattern paper video. She wanted to know if I spray fixative on watercolor paper before I use them in a collage to keep the paint from reactivating with the adhesive. I replied that I don't. Typically, I use a glue stick instead of liquid glue, so I haven't experienced the watercolor reactivating. I failed to mention in my reply that I've only used watercolor pattern paper in my art journal or a sketchbook, not on collages to sell. I like the papers for collages that I sell to be archival. I understand that artwork will fade over time. Her question gave me the idea to test out different adhesives along with spray fixatives. This led me to do some testing on this type of collage paper in a sketchbook. I filmed this testing session as a record for myself of how these different supplies worked. After finished filming, I thought some of you may be interested in this video, so that's why the format is different, and that's the story behind this video. So let's get into it. You see here that I'm painting a sheet of 80-pound drawing paper with watercolor. It's the same paper and watercolor that I used in that previously mentioned video. The adhesives that I used were Mod Podge Matte, Golden Matte Medium, Golden Soft Gel Matte Medium, and Elmer's Extra Strength Glue Stick. I know how the glue stick will perform, but I want to compare the paper glued with it against the other three adhesives. This is a sketchbook that I use to test art supplies and try out ideas. I haven't shown it in a video before. I'm cutting 4 pieces of this watercolor pattern paper, one for each adhesive. I'm starting first with the glue stick. As I glued it down, I realized the watercolor paper wasn't completely dry, so that's where the smudge of paint on the sketchbook came from. I went back and dried the other 3 papers with a hairdryer before continuing. Also, I want to note that I'm using Scott's brand shop towels to smooth out the paper to make sure it adheres to the page. This type of paper towel doesn't leave lint on the surface. Next up is Mod Podge Matte. I brought out an old piece of wax paper to protect the sketchbook page as I applied the adhesive. Now on to Golden's Matte Medium. Same process as the Mod Podge. I recommend using a brush that's dedicated to applying glue. Brushes can be cleaned to remove the adhesives, but they experience a lot of wear and tear. The brushes won't last as long and they won't hold their shape. And finally, Golden Soft Gel Matte Medium. Next, I wanted to test matte finish and spray fixative on these papers to see how they would react. It was raining the day I filmed this video, so I couldn't spray outside. I opened the window next to my filming table and wore this N95 mask. I recommend wearing a mask when you use any type of spray medium, whether you're inside or outside, so you don't inhale any of the contents. I covered the paper not being sprayed with the matte finish to protect it. I wanted clean test results, so I didn't want any of the matte finish on any part of the papers that will have the spray fixative and vice versa. I sprayed about 8 to 10 inches from the surface. Also, it takes about 10 to 15 minutes for each one to completely dry. Besides giving the papers a matte finish, the matte finish spray made the watercolor lighter. It was something for me to note if I wanted to use this product again on watercolor paper. The spray fixative kept the watercolor looking the same. I wanted to try another test, this time applying the matte finish and spray fixative before gluing. I waited 15 minutes for each paper to fully dry before applying the glue. I cut each paper again into 2 separate papers, so each one will be glued with the soft gel matte medium and matte medium that's liquid. I'm applying both matte mediums to both sides of the papers. Typically, I do this technique if the paper has a glossy finish that I want to dull down. Some artists do this technique for all the papers they collage, so I wanted to see if these sprays will protect the watercolor from reactivating. Starting with the papers with the matte finish, I'm applying the soft gel matte medium to the first paper. The watercolor pattern didn't seem to smear on the paper sample. You can see paint on the sketchbook page from where I brushed in that area, so some of the watercolor did reactivate. Next, I'm applying the same medium on the spray fix-it-in paper and got the same results. Now I'm doing the test on both papers with the matte medium that is liquid. The paper that was sprayed with the matte finish had some bleeding in the white areas of the pattern, and of course on the page where I brushed it. For the next paper sample, I switched up the application by applying the matte medium directly on the page to see if the paper would adhere better. I had to go back and apply more of the medium so the paper would stick. Then I applied the medium on top of the paper sample. You can see on the right side of the paper, the purple watercolor smeared onto the center of the shape. I didn't notice if I used more of the matte medium on that paper than I did on the other one. One final test that I almost forgot to do, for collages that won't be framed behind glass, such as on a canvas or wood panel, the final step I do is to seal the whole collage with liquid satin varnish. I use a container and brush dedicated to the varnish. I typically brush on 2 coats of it, but for this test, I did one for all papers except for the first paper. I didn't apply as much varnish to that paper as I did to the others. After waiting an hour for the varnish to dry, I noticed that it didn't modify any of the papers. I was concerned that it might do that because it has a thin consistency. The spray matte finish and the fixative worked well under the varnish. Some final thoughts. All 4 papers were glued successfully by applying all 4 adhesives to the back of each paper. Depending on the look that I want, the matte finish will lighten the watercolor pattern papers, while the spray fixative will keep the look about the same. Regarding applying matte medium to both sides of the watercolor pattern paper, I prefer to apply the glue to the back of the paper, not the substrate. I think less medium can be used to get a secure hold. I prefer using soft gel matte medium over the matte medium that is liquid on top of the paper. I think a light application of the medium and a light brush pressure is best. In my opinion, I don't think it's necessary to apply the matte medium over the top of the paper. Watercolor isn't glossy, so it isn't necessary to dull it. Also, you don't need it to protect the surface. I think using either the matte finish or spray fixative is a better supply to use. The question I need to answer for myself is, would I use watercolor pattern paper on collages that I sell? If it's a collage that will be framed behind glass, the answer is definitely yes. I may use either a matte finish or spray fixative as a final step before framing. If it's a collage that won't be framed behind glass, such as canvas or wood panel, I haven't decided yet. I would like to create 2 small test collages, one on a canvas and one on a wood panel. Testing in a sketchbook can yield different results than testing on a substrate like a canvas or wood panel. Let me know if you'd like me to film that test session. I hope you found this video helpful. Let me know if you'd like to see more of these types of videos. Leave a comment in the section below. Reading your comments does help me to know what types of videos you want to see. Also, questions you have, such as the one Brenda posted, inspire techniques and supplies for me to try. Thanks for taking time out of your day to watch this video. Take care.